Hello! Today I will be watching interview of Bill Burr and determining various aspects through his speech, behavior and appearance. And we'll see if I can determine his Socionic and Psychosophic types. Well, I haven't heard about this guy at all, so this is first time me actually watching any videos of him. And I read on Google, just googled that he is stand-up comedian. So, let's go.
Yes, Bill Burr. How are you, fella?
What's going on?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Joe Rogan is so energetic.
I was doing a night flight, right? Which is insane. Totally different ball game.
Oh, I imagine.
And I trained down in Long Beach, so we were going along the 710, and I just see like all these lights, and it was like right there. I'm like going up, and I go, "What's that?" He goes, and the pilot looked over. He goes, "Oh, that's the fireworks from Disneyland." And I was like, fucking Disneyland is right there? Because in my head, it took like 2 hours to get there, hour and a half, going down the 5. It's not even. It's like from Hollywood, like I would think it can't even be more than 15, 20 miles away.
Okay, very interesting. As soon as I see him, he makes an impression of a grounded guy, and his face, like his skull, is kind of indicates to me that he is probably a censor. And the first thing they're talking about is flights. One of the things sensing people pay special attention to is location of different objects in space. And here you go, right away he's talking about where he was thinking something is located and where it really is. And just before this, he's talking about of his perception of being on a plane, ability to look around, and how it's getting impaired by flying in the nighttime. So it's all sensing topics, and therefore it is a good argument of him being censor.
But I always go out and I do like the auto rotations, and he'll just sort of chop. I'm flying along, he'll just chop throttle, and like it's just rolling the RPMs. I mean, rolling the engine down, not the RPMs, the engine down, and then you immediately have to pick a spot, and sometimes, the lower you are, it becomes literally the first place you look is where you're putting it. It's really crazy, but or where you would
explain to
put
people
it.
what you're talking about. You mean crash landing? That's what auto rotation means.
Yeah, it'd be basically if you had some sort of
failure
problem, engine failure, whatever. So like when you're flying along and the engine's working, it's drawing air into the disc, and that's what creates lift.
Wow, so many sensing details. He discussing about how air affects the rotor blades and how he sees the land and all the technicalities, and he really likes talking about, like he's easily talking about it, and about again how he feels, how he perceives. So this is introverted sensing, as opposed to Joe Rogan like immediately asking, "Oh, but you're talking about crash landing, right?" And crash landing is extroverted sensing, because introverted sensing, in contrast, is about perceiving things, like about looking at things, about how you feel through your senses. And extroverted sensing is about danger, is about threat, and obviously crash landing. It is meant to be prepared you for very dangerous situation, and it can be dangerous as well.
I think every time I get in, I'm always thinking like, am I going to, I don't want to die today. So I go over a whole bunch of shit. If you look up there versus what's going on down below, when you fly, I always say this, when you drive on the highway, it's like you're flying in formation. You're in the Blue Angels with nobody talking to anybody. You have no idea what anybody's going to do. People are texting. They're on medication. They're fucking hungover. They're suicidal. You know what the fuck they're doing, And then on top of that, you got to look out for the guys splitting lanes on the motorcycles and shit. You know what I mean? If you're the person flying the whole time, you have your life and other people's lives at hand, so that you're not really like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Like, I'm also like, thinking things of like, when we were flying through that canyon, and thinking that shit, I'm looking, knowing where the wires are and where the road is, because that's all fucking trees. So it's going to be the road. So there's those, when you're kind of going around a bend, there's certain like altitudes and stuff. Just, it's boring, but it's just stuff that you're always thinking that.
Again, all he's talking about is sensing. I really like how he described how he feels being in a, like on a road around other cars, and how it feels, and that it's like really dangerous. It's interesting that this is exactly how most sensing people they feel on the road. They really feel all these potential threats and all the situations. And later on, when he describes about helicopter as well, like all these details, like where anything is located. So this way, sensing people have better control over dangerous situation, and they generally are safer and require much less training to safely operate different equipment, in terms of not knowledge, but in terms of like feeling and understanding like different dangers and limits, so on and so forth. But what's interesting that I caught in his voice that he doesn't really enjoy, like he said, flying yourself and looking for all these dangers. Like you don't really enjoy flying, and driving. Driving is cool, but because it's dangerous, he also doesn't really enjoy it. And for me personally, it would be the opposite. And because like extroverted sensing, introverted sensing, they contradict each other, it's interesting to see it here. Like he is on the opposite end with the same kind of sensation information, but he's dealing with it differently.
Make sure I don't go too long without doing auto rotations. I used to hate them, and now I actually really like them because it's the same inputs if you were going in for a landing, but they broke it down to like 4 steps. Like it was low RPM, lower collective, gentle aft cyclic, look at your trim strings, trim, airspeed, RPMs, and just fucking doing all of this. And the reality is just like it's on right pedal. Jesus Christ, I forgot that right pedal. So it's all the same. It's all the same input if you were going in for a landing. So all I do anytime I hear the low RPM is I just do that, and then I'm locked into it. And then I'm just watching then I can just watch my RPMs. And at this point, I've flown enough where I kind of know where I'm in trim, which basically means you're not like crabbing in, you're kind of going straight.
I didn't mention this before, but in his speech, he uses a lot of extroverted logic. There are so many details he mentions, there are so much factual information, and he describes it like step by step. He describes it like what's actually he was doing, like instruction, what was steps in instruction, not just some general understanding or principle. He describes like what actually happened, what was said there, what he was doing, so on and so forth. This all is extroverted logic, and he uses a lot of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Now there's probably a bunch of people saying I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, which admittedly, I still think there's a lot of shit I need to learn about stand-up. And I was just like, I am nowhere in my career right now, and this is just, dude, I was walking around, I was living in New York at the time, and I would stop playing the game, and I would be walking down the street thinking about it, like I'd walk into the subway, like not thinking about jokes, thinking how I could beat this next level. And I remember I played this Medal of Honor game, and
yeah, I played it too.
Like the scope would go like that, and X would go like that, and I played it one week so much that when I walked out on the street, I was looking at people across the street doing like that. That X was going on my face. I was just like, there's something about like I already. I'm not the brightest guy, when it comes to like school and shit. So it's just like I was like, this is doing something to my brain. So I remember I came home and I just unplugged everything, like really quickly, and took everything off because I knew I was never going to figure it out, and I didn't have the instructions anymore. I just stuck it in the back of the closet. Like, well, that's it.
Yeah, that's funny and relatable. Made me laugh. So doing his job as a comedian, even though he is not at work right now, but I can certainly see that he carries parts of his job into the interview. What surprised me in his story is that he took apart his computer after he realized that games influence him badly. And it's pretty hard to do something like that, to completely cut yourself off from the thing that you like. And he was liking it a lot, and he knew that he's not going to be able to put it back together. So yeah, that's indication to me that he probably got a high will. I think it shows a lot of discipline and a lot of people wouldn't be able to do what he did. It's worth mentioning though that people with low will are also capable in the right circumstances to do things like that, but it's either usually for temporary, so not for extended time, or it's under the high pressure of the situation. And in his case, I'm not judging him just purely by this one situation, but I'm taking into account the overall interview, and he making impression so far of a person with a high discipline. What's also interesting to me that how he said that he knew he would never be able to figure it out, and it means that he probably doesn't have a second logic, because second logic always finds a way to figure out things. As well as he was mentioning that he wasn't the brightest kid in school. And mentioning stuff like that, it usually means that he subconsciously puts his logic low, so he probably, both of the things indicate that he probably got low logic. Before that, when he was talking about helicopter, and in the end he said, well, I'm gonna stop talking because probably people will think that I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's a common fear specifically for third logic. Earlier when he was talking about everything he knows about helicopters, and he was going on, and he really likes to talk about, and then suddenly he stopped. And what he said that probably people don't know what I'm talking about. Come on, Bill. Of course, it's clear that you know a lot. So it's interesting that he stopped there, and it's indication of him being unconfident in his logical knowledge in this case. And this is a very common fear for third logic. Third logic is especially afraid to be seen as not smart, uneducated, or being accused of not knowing what it's talking about. And when he was talking about a helicopter and sharing his knowledge and all this stuff, and he could continue more and more, I think, but then suddenly third logic kicks in. He starts to feel psychologically uncomfortable of talking so much, and he just shuts himself down. And he probably thinking, oh snap, I probably said too much, when in reality he didn't.
It's 0 to 60 in like 2 point something seconds. And then they have that new one, that Roadster that's coming out, that's 1 point something seconds. 1 point something seconds, 0 to 60.
Yeah, you're in a missile. I mean, it's the only way to put it. Like, God forbid somebody's foot slips off the brake onto the gas. Yeah. You're going to obliterate a street full of people. Man, that's fucking crazy.
It is crazy.
It's bad enough somebody does that on a bike. You can do that on a car with all that weight. And those Teslas...
Wow. I would never personally think about something like that. Like, if you got a fast car, well, like, what can be bad about that? Well... He just said, and honestly, well, he's right. But it's very interesting how, first of all, he really cares about people. I mean, it's some strangers on the street, but he puts them first over having like very fast car for himself. So that's one thing. And another thing that he cares about them not being harmed. Which comes from introverted sensing, which we already discussed is strong. Alright everyone, let's summarize what we've seen and talk about Bill Burr's types. First, is he logic or ethic? Well, funny thing that he is a comedian, and a lot of times comedy is associated with extroverted ethics, but in this interview I almost didn't see it at all. Other some grimaces, but it's like there was very, very little extroverted ethic. And it's interesting to note that comedy can be achieved by many different ways, and it's just about comic finding what's he can bring funny, like about him, or what instruments within his type and psychosophy he can use to make other people laugh. That's about all. It doesn't have to be about extroverted ethics, and I didn't see it here. But what I've seen is a lot of extroverted logic. So he is definitely logic, and he is extroverted logic. So step 2, is he intuit or sensor? Well, he is a sensor, because there was nothing really in terms of intuition, like nothing significant, but there was so much sensing that there are no doubts that he is sensor, and he is introverted sensor. So additionally, well, I didn't mention it like in certain fragments, but it was clear that he is irrational, because he was jumping in his speech from like topic to topic, and he was like remembering things, and it was pretty irrational style of speech. Also important thing to mention is introverted ethics. He definitely values it, because he really cares about people. I've seen it like multiple times, many times throughout the interview, and this indicates that he is indeed from a quadra with introverted ethics in values. So this brings us to sensory logical introvert. And now let's talk about Bill Burr's psychosophic type. Well, first of all, I already mentioned that he is most likely got third logic. And then I also brought up about his high will, which was demonstrated in his interview. Is he got first or second will, which both called high will? Well, I'm pretty sure he got second will, because he didn't show any signs of first will, and first will is much easier to notice. It shows a lot of ego, and he's not that kind of person. So what's left is first and fourth function. He definitely doesn't have first emotion. Despite being a comedian, he seems very unemotional, like quite unsensitive in terms of emotional, even though he is sort of sensitive and vulnerable in introverted ethics, but that's completely different. He's got what you call a tough skin in terms of emotions. It means that he just doesn't let a lot of emotion go through into him, and it doesn't take control over him. He is very reserved, and it's not the same as being indifferent. So it leaves us with first physics. And indeed, his body demonstrates that he looks very much like first physics. He looks tall to me. He looks like a tough guy. So being sensing with first physics definitely matches that. And as always, please share what you think in the comments. I really like to read them, and let me know who you want me to type next. I take in consideration all of your requests, I put them on a list, and when it's time to pick a new person to make a video about, very often I will be picking from that list. A special thank you to those who reached this far into the video without skipping, and I'll see you soon.